My name is Rachel Harrison, and I am 32 years old. As an AI ethics specialist at TechFuture Inc., I never imagined I would become a whistleblower. Marcus, my boss, ignored my warnings about critical security flaws in our enterprise AI system. When he mocked my concerns to the CTO, I felt dismissed but stayed quiet. Then disaster struck. Client data leaked everywhere. In the aftermath, I faced the hardest decision of my career. If you are watching this video, tell me where you are from in the comments and be sure to like and subscribe as I reveal how one file changed everything. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Boston where my parents instilled in me the values of honesty and accountability. My father, an electrical engineer, and my mother, a high school science teacher, encouraged my early interest in technology. I was always the kid taking apart computers just to see how they worked. That curiosity led me to MIT, where I graduated with honors in computer science, specializing in the emerging field of AI ethics. The field of artificial intelligence was exploding when I finished school, but while most of my classmates chased jobs optimizing algorithms for maximum profit, I became increasingly concerned about the ethical implications of our creations. My thesis on responsible development frameworks for enterprise AI caught the attention of several tech companies, and after 5 years working at smaller startups, I landed my dream job at TechFuture Inc., one of Silicon Valley's rising stars in the AI industry. TechFuture occupied a gleaming glass building in downtown San Francisco with panoramic views of the bay and all the perks you would expect from a well-funded tech company. Free gourmet lunches, meditation rooms, and an indoor rock climbing wall that I never actually used. But beneath the shiny surface was a culture that prioritized speed over caution. Their unofficial motto, plastered on motivational posters throughout the office, was, "Move fast and reshape reality," a not-so-subtle variation of the infamous Silicon Valley mantra. As the AI ethics specialist, my job was to ensure our artificial intelligence products were developed responsibly, without inherent biases, and with appropriate safeguards. At least that was the job description. The reality proved more complicated. Our flagship product, IntelliServe, was an advanced AI platform designed to help large enterprises manage their data, automate customer service, and optimize operations. Version 3.0 was our most sophisticated release, yet promising unprecedented integration capabilities and adaptive learning. We had signed contracts with 3 major clients for the initial rollout: Medicorp, a pharmaceutical giant with sensitive patient data; Finance Global, an international investment firm handling billions in transactions; and Defense Tech, a defense contractor with government clearances. My direct supervisor, Marcus Fletcher, had been with TechFuture for 7 years. Tall, always impeccably dressed in designer suits with a sales background before moving into product management. Marcus had a talent for impressive presentations and closing deals, but little patience for technical details or ethical considerations. He viewed my role as a necessary checkbox for regulatory compliance, not as an integral part of product development. "Rachel, we hired you because investors like seeing an ethics person on the team," he once told me during my first performance review. "But remember, we are here to ship products, not write philosophy papers." The Chief Technology Officer, Ethan Wright, had a similar mindset. Despite his technical title, Ethan spent more time in business meetings than coding. He and Marcus had a close relationship, frequently golfing together on weekends and backing each other in executive meetings. Ethan rarely questioned Marcus, creating an echo chamber that made raising concerns difficult. Diana Sullivan, our CEO, was different. A former software engineer who had built TechFuture from a small startup to a company valued at over $2 billion. Diana had a reputation for toughness but fairness. She expected results, but also valued integrity. Unfortunately, as CEO, Diana was often traveling for investor meetings and international business development, leaving day-to-day operations to her executive team. My closest ally at TechFuture was Jasmine Garcia, a brilliant AI engineer who shared my concerns about responsible development. With her desk next to mine in the open office layout, Jasmine and I often discussed the ethical implications of our work. She understood the technical complexities and supported my efforts to integrate safeguards into the system architecture. "Most people here think ethics is just about preventing bias in datasets," Jasmine told me during one of our lunch breaks. "They do not understand that security, transparency, and accountability are just as important." As the release date for IntelliServe 3.0 approached, the pressure intensified. 2 years of development, millions in investment, and the company reputation were all riding on this launch. The executive team had promised investors a revolutionary product that would double our market share, and they were not interested in delays. We have a 2-week window to finalize everything Marcus announced in our team meeting. The board is watching this launch closely, and Diana has personally guaranteed our major clients that we will deliver on schedule. The mood in the office grew increasingly tense. Engineers worked late into the night, fueled by energy drinks and deadline adrenaline. Quality assurance teams ran continuous tests, but the focus was on functionality, not security. As the deadline approached, I began to worry that important safeguards were being overlooked in the rush to ship. Little did I know that in just a few days my worst fears would be confirmed, setting in motion a chain of events that would transform my career and the company forever. It was nearly midnight when I made the discovery. Most of the office had emptied hours ago, but I remained at my desk running additional security tests on IntelliServe 3.0. The main QA team had signed off on the system earlier that day, but something about the inter-client data handling still bothered me. The office was eerily quiet. The only sounds were the hum of the HVAC system and the occasional ping from my computer. The cleaning crew had already finished their rounds, leaving behind the faint smell of lemon disinfectant. My desk lamp cast a small pool of light in the otherwise darkened office, and my third cup of coffee had long gone cold. I was running a specialized test I had designed to check how the AI managed data boundaries between different enterprise accounts. IntelliServe was designed to learn from each client interaction to improve its performance, but these learning models needed to be strictly segregated. Client A should never see data from Client B, nor should the AI apply specific insights from one client to another without appropriate anonymization and safeguards. The first few tests showed normal results. Then I modified the parameters, increasing the volume and complexity of simultaneous requests from multiple simulated clients. That is when I saw it. A momentary flicker in the logs that should not have been there. I reran the test with additional monitoring tools activated. The results made my stomach drop. Under certain load conditions, the AI began to experience what we call boundary confusion. The segregation between client data stores momentarily collapsed, allowing the system to pull training data from one client and apply it to queries from another. Worse still, in these moments of confusion, the system could potentially expose sensitive information across client boundaries. I spent the next 3 hours verifying the issue, creating different test scenarios to understand the full scope of the vulnerability. Each test confirmed my fears. This was not just a minor bug. It was a fundamental architectural flaw in how the system managed enterprise accounts under high-load conditions. And our 3 initial clients represented exactly the kind of high-volume sensitive data users that could trigger the problem. At 2:30 a.m., I texted Jasmine, found something serious in IntelliServe. Can you come in early tomorrow? I finally left the office as the sky began to lighten, my mind racing with implications. Medicorp had patient data and proprietary drug research. Finance Global handled investment strategies and transaction records for global corporations. Defense Tech worked with classified government contracts. The potential for catastrophic data exposure was enormous. Jasmine arrived at 7 a.m., looking concerned. I had barely slept, but was running on a combination of worry and determination. In the quiet of the morning before most employees arrived, I walked her through my findings. Look at this test scenario, I said, pointing to my screen. When the system is processing multiple complex queries simultaneously from different enterprise accounts, the data boundary enforcement temporarily fails. The AI pulls training data from across client boundaries. Jasmine leaned closer, her expression growing more troubled as she examined the logs. This is bad, Rachel. Really bad. It gets worse, I continued, showing her the next set of results. In these instances, the AI does not just use cross-client data for its learning model. It can actually return information from one client in response to another client query. That is a massive data breach waiting to happen, Jasmine said, shaking her head, especially with the clients we are launching with. Exactly. I estimate we need at least 2 weeks to redesign the data boundary enforcement protocols and properly test the fix. Jasmine frowned. You know what Marcus will say. The launch is in 2 weeks. There is no way he will agree to delay. He has to, I insisted. This is not a minor issue we can patch later. This is a fundamental security vulnerability that could expose our clients to massive legal liability and destroy our reputation. We spent the next 2 hours documenting everything, creating slides with clear visualizations of the problem risk assessments for each client and a proposed timeline for fixing the vulnerability. I was meticulous, knowing that Marcus would look for any excuse to dismiss my concerns. As other employees began filtering into the office, Jasmine squeezed my shoulder supportively. Good luck. Let me know how it goes. I emailed myself copies of all the documentation, creating a time-stamped record outside the company's servers. Something told me I might need it. Then, I requested an urgent meeting with Marcus for that afternoon. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of anxiety and preparation. I rehearsed my explanation, anticipating objections and gathering additional evidence. By the time my calendar alert reminded me of the meeting, I felt as ready as I could be to deliver news that I knew nobody wanted to hear. The conference room felt unusually cold as I set up my laptop and connected it to the projector. Glass walls offered a view of the bustling office floor where engineers and product managers hurried between meetings, unaware of the crisis I was about to present. I had chosen Conference Room B, specifically because it was slightly removed from the main traffic areas, providing some privacy for what I anticipated would be a difficult conversation. Marcus arrived 5 minutes late, which was typical. He entered with his usual confident stride, coffee in one hand and phone in the other, barely looking up as he took a seat at the head of the table. This better be important, Rachel. I have a call with Finance Global in 30 minutes, he said, finally setting his phone down. It is important, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I have identified a critical security vulnerability in IntelliServe 3.0 that needs to be addressed before we launch. Marcus sighed dramatically. We go through this every launch. There are always last-minute concerns from your department. What is it this time? I began my presentation starting with the technical explanation of the data boundary issue. I showed him the test results, the log files, and the clear evidence of cross-client data exposure under specific load conditions. This vulnerability creates significant risks for all 3 of our launch clients. I explained, advancing to a slide that detailed the potential impacts. Medicorp could have patient data exposed violating HIPAA regulations. Finance Global could have investment strategies leaked. Defense Tech could have classified information compromised. We are looking at potential regulatory violations, breach of contract lawsuits, and severe reputation damage. Marcus leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. His expression remained dismissive. These are all theoretical scenarios, Rachel. Your tests are synthetic and do not reflect real-world conditions. I ran these tests using realistic data volumes and query patterns based on our client requirements, I countered, pointing to the relevant documentation. This is not theoretical. The vulnerability exists and will be triggered in production. So what are you proposing? Marcus asked, checking his watch impatiently. We need to delay the launch by 2 weeks to redesign the data boundary enforcement system. I have outlined the necessary changes and a testing protocol to verify the fix. I displayed the proposed timeline on the screen. Marcus laughed, a short, harsh sound. Delay. Launch by 2 weeks. Do you have any idea what is at stake here? We have the board breathing down our necks. 3 major clients with signed contracts and a PR campaign ready to go. We are not delaying anything. But the security risk is manageable, he interrupted. We can monitor the system closely after launch and implement fixes if any actual problems occur. By then it will be too late, I insisted, frustration rising in my voice. Once client data is exposed, we cannot take it back. The damage will be done. Marcus stood up and walked to the door. I am getting Ethan. He needs to hear this. 5 minutes later, Marcus returned with Ethan Wright, our CTO. Ethan looked annoyed at the interruption, his tall frame slouching slightly as he dropped into a chair. Marcus says you have found a showstopper bug, Ethan asked, not bothering to hide his skepticism. I patiently went through the presentation again, emphasizing the technical aspects for Ethan's benefit. I showed the data flow diagrams, the logs from the failed tests, and the specific conditions that triggered the vulnerability. Under high load with complex multi-client queries, the AI experiences what I call boundary confusion. I explained. It starts pulling training data across client boundaries and can expose sensitive information between clients. Before I could finish, Marcus interrupted. What Rachel is not mentioning is that these are extreme edge cases that might never occur in production. They are not edge cases, I corrected firmly. Based on the expected usage patterns of our enterprise clients, these conditions will almost certainly occur within the first week of deployment. Ethan frowned, seeming to consider the information more seriously than Marcus had. What about implementing a monitoring system to catch these events if they happen, then shutting down the affected instances? By the time the monitoring system detects the issue, sensitive data would already be exposed, I replied. The only responsible solution is to fix the vulnerability before deployment. Marcus, who had been pacing near the window, turned to Ethan with an exaggerated eye roll. She thinks bots have feelings, he said, his voice dripping with mockery. He laughed, a smug smile spreading across his face. My cheeks burned with anger and humiliation. This was not about AI sentience or feelings. This was about basic security and client data protection. Marcus was deliberately mischaracterizing my concerns to make me sound irrational. Ethan chuckled uncertainly, seeming uncomfortable but unwilling to contradict Marcus. I took a deep breath, determined to stay professional. This has nothing to do with AI feelings. This is about data security and our legal obligations to clients. We promised them secure data handling in our contracts. Marcus waved his hand dismissively. Every software has bugs at launch. We will fix issues as they arise. The business priority is getting to market on schedule. The business priority should be not exposing our clients to massive data breaches, I countered, struggling to keep my voice level. I have made my decision, Marcus stated flatly. We are launching on schedule. Ethan, do you agree? Ethan hesitated, glancing between my presentation still displayed on the screen and Marcus's expectant face. I think we should proceed with the launch, he finally said, though with less conviction than Marcus. But we should increase monitoring and have a rapid response team ready. Perfect, Marcus said, as if the matter was settled. He turned to me. Rachel, I need you to sign off on the final security review for compliance purposes. I shook my head firmly. I cannot sign off on this. The system does not meet our security standards or our contractual obligations. Marcus's expression hardened. Fine. I will sign it myself, as product director. Your objection is noted. He gathered his things and headed for the door. We are done here. Marcus, I called after him, making one last attempt. If this goes wrong, the company could face millions in damages and lose the trust of every enterprise client we have. He paused at the door, looking back with cold eyes. If you cannot handle the pace of innovation, perhaps Tech Future is not the right place for you. After they left, I sat alone in the conference room, my presentation still glowing on the screen. The knot in my stomach tightened as I contemplated what had just happened and what might come next. Little did I know that next would arrive much sooner than any of us expected. The next morning started normally enough. I arrived at the office early, the confrontation with Marcus still weighing heavily on my mind. I had barely slept, alternating between anger at being dismissed so casually and anxiety about the potential consequences. As I settled at my desk with my coffee, my computer chimed with an automated alert from our system monitoring dashboard. At first, I thought it might be a routine notification. We received dozens each day as the system processed its normal workload. But this one was different. A red flag indicator blinked urgently on my screen, anomalous data access pattern detected. My heart sank. I clicked into the detailed logs, hoping it was a false alarm, but knowing deep down what I would find. The monitoring system was registering unusual cross-client data access patterns in the production environment of IntelliServe 3.0. It had begun. I immediately called Jasmine, who was still on her way to the office. It is happening, I said when she answered, not bothering with a greeting. The boundary confusion in the production system. Can you get here right away? On my way, she replied, her voice tense. How bad is it? I am still assessing, but it looks like exactly what we predicted. The system is accessing data across client boundaries. By the time Jasmine arrived 15 minutes later, I had assembled a small team of engineers who were trying to understand the full scope of the problem. We gathered in a small conference room away from the main floor, all of us hunched over laptops as we combed through system logs and access records. The AI is definitely experiencing boundary confusion One of the senior engineers confirmed, pointing to his screen. Look at these query patterns. It is pulling training data from all 3 client environments simultaneously. Jasmine leaned over his shoulder, her expression grim. And these response packets. The system is sending data from Metacorp to Finance Global queries. How long has this been happening? I asked, scrolling through timestamps. Based on the logs, it started around 3 a.m., another engineer replied. That is when the overnight batch processing from all 3 clients hit simultaneously, creating the high load conditions you warned about. I felt sick. So for 6 hours, our system has been potentially leaking client data across boundaries. We worked frantically to assess the damage and contain the breach. I directed 2 engineers to begin shutting down the affected components of the system, while Jasmine and I documented everything for the inevitable investigation. The situation was even worse than I had feared. From what we could determine, Metacorp's proprietary drug research data had been exposed to Finance Global's system, including preliminary results from clinical trials that would affect stock prices if made public. Finance Global's investment strategies and client portfolio information had been shared with Defense Tech's installation. Most alarming of all, technical specifications from Defense Tech's classified projects had been accessible to Metacorp users for several hours. We need to shut everything down, I insisted. Not just the affected components, but the entire IntelliServe deployment for all 3 clients. That will trigger immediate alerts to the clients and executives, Jasmine warned. Better than allowing more data to leak, I replied firmly. Document everything before we shut it down. We need a clear record of what happened. As we worked to contain the damage, word began to spread through the office. Engineers from other teams stopped by to offer help. Project managers hovered anxiously in the hallway trying to get information. The atmosphere grew increasingly tense as the scale of the problem became apparent. Just as we were preparing to initiate the emergency shutdown protocol, Marcus burst into the conference room, his face flushed with anger. What the hell is going on? He demanded, looking around at our team. I just got a call from Diana saying there are rumors of a major system failure. Not rumors, I replied calmly, though my heart was racing. IntelliServe 3.0 is experiencing the exact data boundary vulnerability I warned you about yesterday. Client data has been exposed across boundaries for approximately 6 hours. Marcus's face paled slightly before his expression hardened. This is impossible. You must have done something to the system. The logs are clear, Jasmine interjected, turning her laptop toward him. This is exactly the vulnerability Rachel documented in her report. Marcus ignored her, focusing his anger on me. You had no authority to assemble this team or take any action without consulting me first. There was no time, I responded. Every minute we waited meant more data exposure. Before Marcus could reply, his phone rang. He checked the screen and his expression shifted from anger to worry. It is Diana, he muttered, stepping out of the room to take the call. While he was gone, we proceeded with the emergency shutdown. One by one, the status indicators on our monitoring dashboard turned from green to red as IntelliServe systems went offline across all 3 client environments. It was a drastic step but necessary to prevent further data exposure. Marcus returned minutes later, his earlier bluster replaced by barely concealed panic. Metacorp's CEO just called Diana directly. He said, his voice lower now. They are seeing confidential research data in reports that should not have access to that information. We know, I replied. We are shutting down all systems to contain the breach. No, you cannot just shut everything down, Marcus protested. The clients will. He was interrupted by more notifications on his phone. Finance Global and Defense Tech were also reporting anomalies. Their security teams had detected unauthorized data in their systems and were demanding explanations. The situation deteriorated rapidly from there. Within the hour, all 3 clients had identified significant data exposures and were threatening legal action. Their legal teams were already drafting breach notifications and demanding emergency meetings with Tech Future leadership. Diana Sullivan herself arrived at the office, her face a mask of controlled fury as she was briefed on the situation. Her first question sent a chill through the room. How did this happen and who approved this system for deployment? Knowing these risks existed, all eyes turned to Marcus, who stood uncomfortably by the door. For once he had no smooth answer ready. The estimated damage was staggering. Initial assessments suggested potential liability in the millions. Medicorp was facing regulatory scrutiny for patient data exposure. Finance Global was implementing emergency measures to change investment strategies that had been compromised. Defense Tech had already notified government agencies about the potential exposure of classified information. As the crisis management kicked into high gear, I returned to my desk to gather all the documentation I had prepared before the launch. The warnings, the test results, the proposed fixes, and most importantly, the record of my meeting with Marcus and Ethan. I had a feeling they would be needed very soon. By late afternoon, the entire executive team had assembled in the main conference room. The mood was somber, with tense faces around the table, reflecting the gravity of the situation. Diana Sullivan sat at the head, her normally energetic demeanor replaced by a steely calm that was somehow more intimidating. Marcus sat to her right, nervously adjusting his tie every few minutes. Ethan was there too, looking uncomfortable and avoiding eye contact with everyone. I sat near the end of the table with Jasmine and the lead engineers who had helped contain the breach. Technical teams were still working to assess the full extent of the data exposure, but the preliminary reports were grim enough to warrant this emergency meeting. Diana began without preamble. I have just finished back-to-back calls with the CEOs of Medicorp, Finance Global, and Defense Tech. All three are considering terminating their contracts with us, and all three are contemplating legal action. Her voice was controlled but edged with anger. I need to understand exactly what happened, how it happened, and who is responsible. The lead system architect gave a technical overview of the failure, confirming what I had discovered days earlier. Under specific load conditions, the AI system had experienced boundary confusion resulting in cross-client data exposure. What I want to know, Diana continued, when he finished, her gaze sweeping the room, is how a vulnerability this serious made it through our quality assurance process. Who approved this for deployment? The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Marcus, who straightened in his chair. We followed standard protocols, he began, his voice carrying a practiced confidence that I had heard many times in client presentations. Our QA team signed off on all standard security tests. What happened was an extreme edge case that could not have been reasonably anticipated. I could not believe what I was hearing. Marcus was outright lying, pretending that no one had warned him about this exact scenario. The system performed flawlessly in all standard security assessments, Marcus continued. This particular failure mode only emerged under very specific production conditions that are difficult to simulate in testing. Diana turned to me. Rachel, as our AI ethics specialist with a focus on security, did your team evaluate this system before launch? Before I could answer, Marcus interjected. Rachel raised some theoretical concerns, but nothing concrete that would have justified delaying our launch to 3 major clients. My pulse quickened as anger and disbelief washed over me. Marcus was not just bending the truth, he was completely misrepresenting what had happened. With all due respect, Ethan added, backing up Marcus, we have to balance security concerns with business realities. Every system has potential vulnerabilities. Diana looked at me directly. Rachel, is that an accurate characterization of your input? I felt every eye in the room on me. This was the moment of truth, literally and figuratively. My career at TechFuture, possibly my entire professional reputation, hung in the balance. Speaking against a senior executive like Marcus could make me unhireable in Silicon Valley. Staying silent would make me complicit in his lie. I would like to review my notes before responding, I said carefully. May I have until the end of the day to provide a complete account? Diana nodded, though her expression suggested she sensed there was more to the story. We will reconvene tomorrow morning at 9. I expect full transparency from everyone involved. As the meeting dispersed, Marcus caught up with me in the hallway, his expression dark. Be very careful about what you say tomorrow, Rachel. Remember that you are part of this team, and team players protect each other. The threat was thinly veiled, but I simply nodded and continued walking. My mind was already made up. Back at my desk, I opened my secure cloud drive and accessed the folder I had created after my meeting with Marcus. There was the detailed report I had prepared, the test results, showing the vulnerability, the timeline proposal for fixing it, and one more item, an audio recording of the entire meeting. California is a 2-party consent state for recordings, but TechFuture's own security policy, which all employees signed, included a clause that all meetings in company conference rooms were subject to recording for security, and documentation purposes. I had activated the standard recording feature in Conference Room B, and the system had automatically saved it to the secure server. I played a portion of the recording, hearing Marcus's dismissive tone as he rejected my warnings, his mocking comment about bots having feelings, and his clear statement that he would sign off on the launch despite the known risks. It was all their undeniable evidence that he had been fully informed and had chosen to ignore a critical security vulnerability. For hours, I sat at my desk weighing my options. I thought about my parents and what they would advise. My father had always told me that integrity was doing the right thing even when it was difficult. My mother had taught me that truth was not negotiable. I thought about the clients whose data had been compromised, the patients whose privacy had been violated, the financial customers whose information had been exposed, and the sensitive government projects that had been put at risk. All because one executive had decided that meeting a deadline was more important than security. I called Jasmine, needing a sounding board for my thoughts. If I send this recording to Diana, Marcus will almost certainly be fired, I said. And he will do everything in his power to destroy my reputation in the industry. If you do not send it, 3 major clients might sue the company, dozens of people could lose their jobs in the fallout, and you would have to live with knowing you stayed silent. Jasmine replied gently. When you put it that way, it is not really a choice at all, I said with a sigh. After we hung up, I composed an email to Diana. It was straightforward and professional, explaining that I had documented evidence contradicting Marcus's account of events. I attached my original security report, the test results, and finally the audio recording of the meeting, where Marcus dismissed my warnings and mocked my concerns. My finger hovered over the send button for a full minute. Once I sent this, there would be no turning back. My relationship with Marcus, possibly with Ethan too, would be irreparably damaged. Office politics could make my position untenable regardless of who was right. But the alternative was to be complicit in a cover-up, to allow Marcus to escape accountability for a decision that had endangered our clients and our company. I clicked send. As the email disappeared from my outbox, I felt a strange mixture of dread and relief. Whatever happened next, I had stayed true to my principles and done what I believed was right. I gathered my things and left the office, knowing that tomorrow would bring a reckoning one way or another. My phone rang at 7:30 the next morning. It was Diana Sullivan calling me directly. My stomach tightened as I answered. Rachel, I received your email last night, she said without preamble. Her tone was serious but not angry. I have listened to the recording. Can you come to my office at 8:30 before the general meeting? I would like to speak with you privately. Yes, of course, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. Good. And Rachel, thank you for your honesty. It could not have been an easy decision. The call ended, leaving me staring at my phone in surprise. I had expected many possible reactions, but gratitude was not one of them. When I arrived at Tech Future that morning, the atmosphere was noticeably tense. People spoke in hushed tones, and several colleagues gave me curious looks as I made my way to Diana's corner office. Word had clearly spread that something significant was happening. Diana's assistant showed me in immediately. The CEO's office was impressive but not ostentatious, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city and simple, elegant furniture. Diana stood as I entered, gesturing for me to take a seat across from her desk. I spent most of the night reviewing all the documentation you provided, she began, and speaking with our legal team about the implications. The recording leaves no room for interpretation. Marcus was clearly informed of a critical security vulnerability and chose to ignore it for the sake of meeting a deadline. I nodded, uncertain what to say. I would like to hear your full account of what happened from the moment you discovered the issue until now. Diana continued. Take your time. For the next 20 minutes, I walked her through everything from my late-night discovery of the vulnerability to the confrontation with Marcus and Ethan, to the data breach and its aftermath. Diana listened intently, occasionally making notes but never interrupting. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair with a sigh. I built this company on 2 core principles: innovation and integrity. It seems we have been emphasizing the first at the expense of the second. She glanced at her watch. It is almost 9. We should join the others, but before we do, I want you to know that you did the right thing, Rachel. No matter what happens next, remember that. The main conference room was packed when we arrived. The entire executive team was present along with department heads and key technical staff. Marcus sat rigidly in his chair, his expression a mask of professional neutrality that did not quite hide his tension. Ethan looked pale and uncomfortable. Diana took her place at the head of the table and opened her laptop. Without any preliminary remarks, she pressed play on the audio recording I had provided. Marcus's voice filled the room, dismissive and mocking, followed by his clear decision to launch despite the known security risks. "She thinks bots have feelings," his recorded voice said, followed by laughter. I watched Marcus's face drain of color as his own words condemned him. Ethan stared fixedly at the table, avoiding everyone's gaze. When the recording ended, Diana closed her laptop with a decisive click. This recording was made in Conference Room B, using our standard security recording system that all employees acknowledge in their employment agreements. It clearly documents that Rachel Harrison warned both Marcus Fletcher and Ethan Wright about a critical security vulnerability in IntelliServe 3.0, and that this warning was dismissed without proper investigation. Marcus finally found his voice. "This is a setup," he protested, his confident facade cracking. "She manipulated the situation to make me look bad." "The recording speaks for itself," Diana replied coolly. "As does the detailed security report Rachel prepared, which exactly predicted the failure mode we experienced yesterday." "Recording conversations without consent is illegal in California," Marcus argued, his tone becoming desperate. "Our company policy explicitly states that conference rooms are subject to recording for security purposes," Diana countered. "Our legal team has confirmed that the recording is both legal and admissible." Marcus changed tactics, turning to face me directly. "You deliberately undermined a senior executive and damaged this company's reputation. I will make sure everyone in Silicon Valley knows you cannot be trusted as a team player." I held his gaze steadily, but said nothing. His threats seemed hollow, now exposed in front of the entire leadership team. Ethan cleared his throat. "For the record, I did have concerns after Rachel's presentation, but I deferred to Marcus's judgment as product director. That was my mistake." Diana nodded, acknowledging his partial admission. "Ethan, we will discuss your role in this separately." She turned back to address the entire room. "Effective immediately, Marcus Fletcher is suspended pending a full investigation by our HR and legal teams. Ethan Wright will continue in his role but will work with an oversight committee on all product security decisions." Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You cannot do this. I built the IntelliServe product line. I brought in our 3 biggest clients. And your decision nearly cost us those same clients." Diana replied firmly. "Security breaches of this magnitude cannot be tolerated, but deliberately ignoring documented security risks is absolutely unacceptable at Tech Future." As Marcus stormed out of the room, Diana outlined the company's response plan. A specialized security team would work around the clock to redesign the data boundary systems. I would lead a comprehensive review of all AI products to identify any similar vulnerabilities. Most importantly, Diana herself would meet personally with each affected client to take responsibility for the breach and present our remediation plan. "Transparency and accountability are the only way forward," she declared. "We made a serious mistake and we will own it completely." In the weeks that followed, the investigation confirmed everything the recording had revealed. Marcus was officially terminated for gross negligence and violation of company security protocols. Ethan received a formal reprimand and was required to complete additional security training. Our meetings with the clients were difficult but productive. Diana took full responsibility on behalf of Tech Future, never once attempting to shift blame or minimize the breach. We offered comprehensive compensation packages and committed to unprecedented transparency in our development process moving forward. "We failed you," Diana told Medicorp's CEO in a meeting I attended. "But we are determined to learn from this failure and rebuild your trust." To my surprise, 2 of the 3 clients agreed to continue working with us, impressed by our honest handling of the crisis. The 3rd defense tech required additional security certifications before renewing their contract, which we committed to obtaining. As the dust settled, I found myself in an unexpected position. Rather than being ostracized as a whistleblower, I was respected for my integrity. Diana appointed me to a newly created position, Director of AI Ethics and Security, reporting directly to her rather than through the product organization. We need your voice to be heard at the highest levels, she told me. This company cannot afford to repeat this mistake. 6 months after the data breach that nearly destroyed Tech Future, I stood at the podium in our largest conference room presenting the new AI ethics and security framework to the entire company. My team had grown from just me to a department of 12 specialists with dedicated representatives embedded in every product team. The boundary enforcement architecture we have implemented ensures that client data remains strictly segregated. I explained, showing slides of the redesigned system. And our new transparent testing protocols allow clients to verify these protections themselves. From my position at the front of the room, I could see Diana nodding approvingly from the back row. The company had transformed in the aftermath of the crisis. What could have been our downfall had instead become a catalyst for meaningful change. All 3 of our major clients had not only returned but had expanded their contracts with us. Medicorp's Chief Information Security Officer had publicly praised our new approach in an industry conference, calling Tech Future a model for responsible AI development. Finance Global had asked us to help design industry-wide security standards for financial AI systems. Even Defense Tech had returned after we completed a rigorous security certification process. My personal journey had been more complicated. In the weeks following Marcus's termination, I struggled with conflicting emotions. Despite knowing I had done the right thing, I felt a lingering sense of guilt about my role in ending his career. Some colleagues, particularly those who had been close to Marcus, kept their distance from me, viewing me as disloyal or opportunistic. You did what needed to be done. Jasmine reassured me over lunch one day when I confessed these feelings. Marcus made his choice when he ignored a critical security risk. You simply made sure the truth came to light. Gradually, the whispers and sidelong glances faded. My new team formed a supportive community committed to ensuring that ethical considerations were never again sacrificed for expediency. We developed new protocols, testing methodologies, and oversight mechanisms that became standard practice throughout the company. Diana had kept her word about elevating the importance of ethics and security. My department now had veto power over product launches, a dramatic shift from the days when Marcus could dismiss security concerns with a laugh. Every major decision required sign-off from both the product team and the ethics team, creating a healthy tension that resulted in better, safer products. The company culture evolved as well. The old motto, "Move fast and reshape reality," was replaced with "Innovate responsibly, build trust." Weekly town halls included open discussions of ethical dilemmas faced by various teams, creating a space where raising concerns was valued rather than punished. One day, about 4 months after the incident, I received an unexpected email from Ethan. After his reprimand, he had maintained a professional but distant relationship with me. "I should have backed you up in that meeting with Marcus," his message read. "I knew you were right about the vulnerability, but I was too concerned about deadlines and relationships to speak up. I am sorry, and I am grateful that you had the courage I lacked." That simple acknowledgement helped heal one of the remaining wounds from the entire ordeal. Ethan and I would never be close friends, but we had found a new professional respect for each other. As for Marcus, I heard through industry connections that he had struggled to find another executive position. The story of Tech Future's data breach had spread throughout Silicon Valley, though the details of his role were not public knowledge. Eventually, he landed at a smaller startup in a reduced capacity. I took no pleasure in his difficulties, but I also recognized the importance of accountability. The most profound change was within myself. The experience had forced me to define my values and stand by them under extreme pressure. I had discovered a strength. I was not sure I possessed a willingness to risk my career for what I believed was right. In my new role, I made it my mission to create an environment where no one would have to make the choice I faced, where raising concerns was seen as an act of loyalty to the company and its clients, not as a betrayal or inconvenience. The true test of our ethics is not what we say in our mission statements. I often told new employees during orientation, but the decisions we make when those ethics conflict with convenience deadlines or profit. A year after the incident, I was invited to give a keynote address at the International Conference on AI Ethics in Boston. As I prepared my presentation reflecting on everything that had happened, I distilled the experience into key lessons that extended far beyond Tech Future or even the tech industry. First, technical safeguards are only as strong as the human systems that implement them. The most sophisticated security architecture can be undermined by a culture that prioritizes speed over safety. Second, silence in the face of known risks is its own form of action. By staying quiet when we see potential harm, we become participants in whatever follows. Third, organizations must create structures where ethical concerns can be raised without fear, where the messengers are protected rather than punished. And finally, personal integrity sometimes requires difficult choices with uncertain outcomes. The right path is rarely the easiest one. As I stood at the podium in Boston looking out at hundreds of professionals facing similar challenges in their own organizations, I felt a sense of purpose that transcended my individual experience. What had begun as a personal ethical dilemma had become an opportunity to reshape how we approach technology development. In the rapidly evolving field of artificial intelligence, I concluded in my speech, our greatest responsibility is not just to make our systems smarter, but to ensure they embody our highest values. The choices we make today will shape the technological landscape for generations to come. After the conference, I received dozens of messages from attendees facing similar ethical dilemmas in their own companies. Some had already taken stands similar to mine, while others were still gathering the courage to speak up. Each story reinforced my belief that the work we were doing mattered beyond our immediate business concerns. Today, as I lead a team dedicated to ethical AI development, I often think about that moment when my finger hovered over the send button about to deliver the evidence that would upend my workplace. It was simultaneously the hardest and easiest decision of my career. Hard because of the unknown consequences, easy because the alternative was to betray my own values. If you are facing a similar crossroads in your own life or career, I hope my story gives you courage. The path of integrity is rarely smooth, but it is one you can walk with your head held high. Have you ever had to stand up for what is right when it was difficult? How did you handle it? I would love to hear your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might be struggling with their own ethical dilemma. Remember, sometimes all it takes is knowing you are not alone to find the strength to do what is right. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to honor your own values, whatever challenges you may face.